Hello everyone. I don't usually do this sort of thing, but this is something that I feel like I really need to get off my chest because I've been bottling in how I feel about this for quite some time. And yeah, it's something that, I really, you know, means a lot to me, and I haven't really got the chance to talk about it much. So that's why I'm making this sort of quick video to, just go over my thoughts on this whole thing. So basically, um, I'm sure if you're a fan of the Muppets or Disney parks in any way, you've probably already heard that um, on June June 7th of this year, that's going to be basically the last ever day that you can watch Muppet Vision 3D, or eat at Pizza Rizzo and enjoy any parts of the Muppet Courtyard, because after that it's going to be going away and it'll be replaced by Monsters Inc. And I have a lot to say about this because I am a huge fan of the Muppets. I mean, lifelong fan. And I'm also a pretty big fan of the Disney parks as well. I've been going there since I was a kid. I enjoy them. And so, yeah, naturally this news is very saddening. As far as my recollection, my first time I ever actually went to see Muppet Vision 3D was back in 2014. I was about maybe 7 years old. And yeah, I'm kind of a baby, and yeah, I just remember, immediately loving it and just loving all parts of the experience, really, because, I was a huge fan of the Muppets. And actually, these Kermit and Miss Piggy stuffed animals right here, I actually got these from that trip. I got these from the Stage One Company store, and I still have them, as well as this little beaker keychain. Got all of those from the same trip, and yeah, I mean, Muppet Vision and Muppet Courtyard just, it means a lot to me, and it really, felt like a special place. But now that's all going to be going away, and it's quite sad. Now, there are a number of reasons why I'm not a fan of this announcement at all, and I'm gonna do my best to try to explain them all. But the most, the most obvious one that everybody has been saying is, how Muppet Vision 3D was the last ever project that came out that Jim Henson worked on, and now they're going to be removing that, and it's really just feels like a huge disrespect to his legacy and and what he's done. And yeah, it just feels like a huge slap in the face, really. Now, I've been a lifelong fan of Jim Henson's works and just everything that he's done. And yeah, I think that it's kind of distasteful to just see Disney stripping away this really important part of Muppet history, and I think Tom from Walt Disney World News Today said it best. Like, there are certain things that Disney World, or the Disney parks in general, that you just do not touch. Like, Great Moments of Mr. Lincoln is one of those things, Carousel of Progress, and Muppet Vision 3D is definitely one of them. And yeah, for the longest time, we were all kind of thinking, like, Muppet Vision is here to stay because, it's just such an important part of Jim's legacy. However, since they're moving that, or since they're removing that, it seems like, Disney just doesn't really care, and they just are wanting to focus on what makes them the most money. Now, not only is it really important as far as Jim Henson's legacy, it's also, a really important part of many other of the Muppet performers' legacies. Like, I mean, this show, you see Jim Henson, there's Frank Oz, Richard Hunt, I mean Steve Whitmire, like, and characters like Rizzo and Bean Bunny have huge parts in this show, and yeah, and it really, I feel like it really immortalizes those characters, especially now that Steve Whitmire sadly is no longer with Disney, or seemingly with any of the companies, and it seems like it's kind of erasing those characters, especially after Rizzo has been retired, and yeah, and Bean Bunny hasn't really been used since like the 90s maybe, and yeah, it's just kind of sad to see those characters be gone. As well, and like I said, with many of the other Muppet performers, like Richard Hunt, rest in peace, and Frank Oz, and yeah, it's just really, it really feels like such a great collaboration of talent is going to be gone. Now, let's talk a little bit about what is going to be replacing Muppet Courtyard, and that's going to be a Monsters Inc. land with, they're going to have a new 3D show, and they're going to have a new restaurant, I'm pretty sure, and most importantly, the big part of the announcement is they're actually going to have a roller coaster themed to the Doors. The scene at the end of the movie where, there's all the Doors, and they're, sort of, racing along with the Doors, sort of like a roller coaster. So yeah, and yeah, they're gonna make a roller coaster out of that. And that all sounds good, but the more you really think about it, Disney Imagineering hasn't been the same since, it hasn't been the same for a long time, and we've seen that, with the recent Haunted Mansion things that they've been doing at Disneyland. We saw that they actually use AI artwork, which is just, that's just terrible. I mean, AI art shouldn't exist, if you ask me, but that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, it feels like for a while there's just been creativity that's just been gone from Disney Imagineering, and the Muppet Courtyard is so intricately themed. I mean, there's so many little details that are it's just so well crafted, and it's really hard to notice everything on one visit, because there's the net full of Jello, there's like the pigs in space, I think it's called the swine Shrek, that's actually hanging from the ceiling in the pre-show to Muppet Vision 3D. And there's just so many like little jokes written on the walls, and just so many funny signs, and it's just really brilliantly themed. I honestly think you could spend pretty much a whole day just looking around and noticing new things, and especially in the extended queue for Muppet Vision 3D, they have the parody posters, and they have the little eyeballs, and the pipes, they're all given like little faces to actually kind of look like Muppets, and you can tell just a lot of love went into the theming of Muppet Courtyard, and I do not think that we'll get that with the new Monsters Inc. land, and I don't think we're really going to get that with the Rock and Roller Coaster, which we'll talk about later. But there's just so much great theming that's now going to be lost, which it really sucks. And I love Monsters Inc. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's my favorite Pixar movie, and I really do love that movie. But do I think it has the same cultural impact that the Muppets have? No, I don't think so. And and I could be biased because I'm a huge Muppet fan, but I really don't think that, you know, it has the cultural staying power that the Muppets have. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the idea of a Monsters Inc. land. I mean, like, you know, I mean, how many times have you watched that movie and, you know, seen the scene with the doors and actually thought to yourself, like, hey, that would make a great amusement park ride. And now that's actually happening, and that's cool. And I want to be excited about that, but, you know, it's replacing such an iconic part of the park and such an important part of Muppet history. And it's just, it it makes it begs the question, why couldn't they put it in Animation Courtyard where Star Wars Launch Bay is? Because like that's already a pretty dead part of the park, and not that many people really go to the Star Wars Launch Bay anymore. I mean, really the biggest reason to go there these days, especially now that Galaxy's Edge has opened, is because it's air conditioning. And do we really need three Star Wars areas of the park? I mean, no, because, you know, the Star Wars launch bay was basically put there so that it could scratch the itch of more Star Wars stuff in the park until Galaxy's Edge opened. But now that that's opened, you don't really need it there. And plus, if you were to put Monsters Inc. in that area, then you'd already be putting it pretty close to another Pixar area of the park, which is Toy Story Land. Yeah. Honestly, the most baffling part about this whole thing is that the Star Wars launch bay has survived this long. If I was in charge, I definitely put the Monsters Inc. land where Star Wars launch bay is. And what really makes this news that much more saddening to me is that we're not just losing Muppet Vision 3D, we're losing all of Muppet Courtyard. I mean, we're losing Muppet Vision, we're losing Pizza Rizzo, and we're losing the Stage One Company store, even though it's been, you know, open on and off. But we're losing the Miss Piggy fountain. I really hope they relocate the Miss Piggy fountain, because I mean, come on, that's just too iconic. Like you can't get rid of that. And yeah, we're losing all parts of it. Even, you know, stuff like Mama Melrose's and the Christmas shop and stuff like that. Like it really sucks that we're losing this area. And, you know, to many Muppet fans like myself, that area has felt like a second home. And, you know, and Disney's just pulling a Tex Richmond and, you know, demolishing it. And that's another area of the park that we're missing is Gonzo's Royal Flush. I mean, I know it's just a bathroom, but still, you know, it's Muppets and it's themed to the 2011 movie. It's such an overlooked area of the park, but it really is just, it's just such a beautiful area, and the fact that we're losing all of it soon is, you know, it sucks. It really does, because, you know, and there's so many like just great bits there too. Like, you know, the animal was here, the security guards, you know, back in 5 minutes, key under mat, and the key's actually under the mat. You can't replace this stuff. It's little things like that that make the Muppet Courtyard so great. And the more you think about it, the more you think there's just, you know, so much in that small area that, you know, we have no idea where it's all going to be now. Like, you know, where's the net full of Jello gonna go? You know, what's gonna happen to, like, you know, all those wooden crates in the queue for Muppet Vision 3D, or in the pre-show area? You know, what's gonna happen to that giant portrait of the puppet version of Jim Henson? Like, where's that gonna go? And you know, and all the, you know, the framed photos of the Muppets, you know, and yeah, there's just, you know, so much, and I just don't like the thought of all that one day going into storage and just sitting there for the rest of eternity. Now, like I said, I'm a huge fan of the Disney theme parks. I like all parts of Walt Disney World, but Muppet Vision was always that one thing that was always bringing me back to the parks. And whenever I had a trip planned, it was always a thing that I was looking forward to the most. But now knowing that pretty soon it's not going to be there, it makes me want to go back there less and less. Because Muppet Vision just felt like such a staple of Disney World, and it felt like something that was going to be here to stay. However, sadly, that's no longer the case. Now, on that note, we should go ahead and talk about what the Jim Henson Company has said regarding preserving the actual film and other parts of the experience, as they've said. So the Jim Henson Company, shortly after it was announced that Muppet Vision 3D will be going away, they said that they're looking into options for preserving the film as well as other parts of the experience. And, you know, to many fans, their biggest guess as to how they're going to be doing that is just going to be, you know, throwing it on Disney Plus, which I'm not a fan of that idea, because Muppet Vision 3D is something that is not meant to be watched at home on your TV. I mean, it's meant to be seen on a huge screen, you know, in this grand theater with, you know, with effects and, you know, and bubbles and animatronics all around you, and, you know, and Sweetums, you know, coming in and, you know, and interacting with the audience, and like and you can't get that at home. Like it's a theme park attraction, and there's so much more to the experience than just the movie. And even if they were to take professional recordings of, you know, of like the animatronics like Statler and Waldorf and Bean and the Swedish Chef, and if even if they were to, you know, like, you know, show us like Sweetums and like other parts of the theater, it still would not be the same, because I mean, one, we already have plenty videos like that on YouTube already, but also, like I said, it's meant to be experienced in person, not to mention the whole 3D part of it. I mean, it's called Muppet Vision 3D, and to watching it without the 3D effects just wouldn't make much sense at all. The only way I could see the whole home media release potentially working would be if they were to release it on DVD, because in that case you could actually like have like 3D effects, you know, with the red and blue anaglyph glasses, or even if you had a 3D TV, you could do it like that. And I'll admit it, the idea of actually physically owning Muppet Vision 3D does sound really cool. But even then, still, like I said, it's just not meant to be seen on your TV. You know, it's meant to be seen in a huge theater with effects going on around you. So let's talk a little bit about the new Muppet roller coaster that's going to be happening, or at least half new Muppet roller coaster. So basically, one of Disney Hollywood Studios' more famous rides, the Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith, well, it's no longer going to star Aerosmith, and it's going to star the Muppets now. Now, that's really cool. I mean, an e-ticket attraction with the Muppets, like, that's a dream come true for Muppet fans like I. But it feels like we made a wish on a monkey's paw. Like, oh, you want a new e-ticket attraction? Okay, we're gonna take away Muppet Vision. And I've never been the biggest thrill ride person, but I'll certainly make an exception for this new ride. However, there are people who cannot ride roller coasters. you know, and to have this be the only Muppet attraction in the park, and it be, you know, such an intense roller coaster, it feels like it's kind of alienating people who are, you know, who are physically unable to go on roller coasters, or small children who probably aren't old enough to ride roller coasters. And so, and that really just defeats the whole purpose of the Muppets being for everyone, because Muppet Vision 3D was a perfect attraction for the Muppets, because it didn't matter how old you were or anything. Like, anyone could go on that attraction and have some sort of enjoyment out of it. But since this is actually like a roller coaster, you know, there are gonna be some people who aren't able to experience it. And that's too bad, because everybody should experience the, you know, the wacky shenanigans of the Muppets. Now, going back to the whole theming thing, like I said, the Disney Imagineering hasn't really been the same for a while. And we have seen that with rides like Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which I haven't personally ridden it, but from what I've seen, I'm not too impressed, and it kind of looks like something that belongs at a Six Flags or something. And my biggest fear with the new Muppet Rock and Roller Coaster is that it's going to end up something like that. And that would really suck if we went from this greatly themed entire area dedicated to the Muppets to then going to some under-themed ride featuring the Muppets. Like I said, there's so many just like little jokes written on signs and stuff in, you know, in Muppet Vision 3D and all the Muppet Courtyard. And I don't think that Disney Imagineering these days, you know, could really pull something like that off. Even with some of their more recent rides like Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind and, you know, Tron Light Cycle Run, super fun rides. I mean, especially Cosmic Rewind. You know, when I went on that for the first time last year, I mean, man, that blew me away. It was such a fun ride. But I will admit the theming felt a little lacking, and there were certain parts of it that felt pretty bare bones. And, you know, same could be said about Tron. Now, I would still say that I'm cautiously optimistic about the Muppet Coaster, because, I mean, the idea of that sounds really cool. Because, like, you get to, you know, go through a roller coaster while listening to Muppet songs, like, and there's already, like, a huge lineup of songs in my head that I'm thinking, like, you could have Can You Picture That? You could have Rock On, the theme song to Muppets Mayhem. You know, you could even throw in some other stuff like Cabin Fever from Muppet Treasure Island. Like, the possibilities really are endless with that. And I'm very hopeful that they, you know, do that to their full potential, but at the same time, cautiously optimistic, because Disney doesn't entirely know what to do with the Muppets anymore. And another thing that people have pointed out about this new Muppet ride is that it's going to be featuring the current state of the Muppets, and it's going to be featuring Matt Vogel's Kermit. Now, I very much respect Matt Vogel. I think he's proven time and time again that he's a great puppeteer, and, you know, he's taken over, you know, roles from Jerry Nelson, such as, you know, Floyd Pepper and the Count from Sesame Street, and he has his own character Constantine from Muppets Most Wanted, and he's proven that he's a great performer, and he knows what he's doing. But I'm not a fan of his Kermit. And the fact that this is going to be replacing an attraction that had Jim Henson in it performing as Kermit, yeah, that is, you know, kind of a bummer. Also, knowing Disney, they're probably gonna, you know, stick to screens for the pre-show. And I would really love for them to actually use animatronics, but again, knowing Disney, they're probably just going to stick with the screens. And hopefully we'll get some actual animatronics on the ride, but we'll see. Overall, I'm hopeful for the Muppet Rock and Roller Coaster, but I mean, I'll forever be sad about the loss of Muppet Vision and Muppet Courtyard, because it really was such a great part of Walt Disney World, and it was always something I looked forward to on every visit. And yeah, it really just sucks that we're losing it. And yeah, it really does make me feel less motivated to go back to Disney World, even though I like Disney World. But without, you know, without Muppet Courtyard, it's gonna be tough. Now, to make sure this doesn't end on too much of a downer note, I do want to talk about a little bit of hope that we can hold on to for the future of Muppet Vision. So basically, in Sunset Boulevard, which is where Rock and Roller Coaster is located, right next to it is the Sunset Showcase Theater. And for a long time, that held Lightning McQueen's Racing Academy, which has now been removed, and it's making way for a new villain show. And that villain show is basically to, test the waters out and, kind of hold people over until the villain's land opens in Magic Kingdom. Now, my thinking is, once Villain's Land in Magic Kingdom opens up, there's basically gonna not be much of a use for that villain show there and in the Sunset Showcase Theater. So you can probably see where I'm going with this. I think that, once Villain Lands opens up, you can take out that villain show and put Muppet Vision in that theater. And it's definitely a smaller theater, but I still think that it's perfect for Muppet Vision. And you can even, have a whole new Muppet area there with, a new gift shop and, plenty of Muppet merchandise. And you can bring the Miss Piggy fountain back. And I think that would just be, a perfect place to have a new Muppet area of the park. Now, I don't know if Disney will actually do this or not, but it's just a little bit of hope that we can hold on to. Who knows, maybe it's wishful thinking, but I like to think that the future of Muppet Vision 3D could lie somewhere in Sunset Boulevard. And that's all of my thoughts. This is something that I've been wanting to talk about for a long time. And if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching and listening to me. Like I said, I haven't really done videos like this before, so pardon me if it's a little bit amateurish, but I hope I was able to, get some of the points across I'm trying to make. And, well, it's definitely sad to see Muppet Vision 3D go. But maybe, just maybe, we can see it come back someday. Thank you all for watching, and keep believing, keep pretending.